Hello, I'm Doug Benedict, and welcome to the Butler Esports interview series, where we're interviewing sports leaders, owners, and industry experts in the evolving world of esports. Today's interview is with Don Wettrick, graduate of Ball State University Public Relations and IUPUI Secondary Education, author of Pure Genius, and founder of STARTedUP Foundation. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Doug.
Great to have you. So let's just jump right into it. How did you get started professionally?
I was first career out of college. I was working in material where I was working. I just wasn't enjoying myself as much as I thought. And my dad is a teacher. My sister was a teacher. Last thing I thought I was going to be as a teacher. But at the same time, I also wanted to be like my dad. So after 3 years of not being a teacher, I ended up going back, getting a teaching license, and started to do unusual things. Started an unusual class. And then we were always open up to a lot of tech ideas and different evolving things in ed. And that kind of gave me a new second career with both the foundation and just as a speaker and author.
So what led you to esports, the reason we have you on today?
Yeah, a student. The class was called Innovation and Open Source Learning, which is a nice way of saying, what do you want to do and who do you want to work with? So innovation in the sense that we taught you how to think, how to a little design thinking, understanding your own network, take why LinkedIn is important at your age, but then also open source learning in the sense that, who do you want to work with? So if you're wanting to code an app in Python, I'm not your guy, but I can certainly make introductions. So a student of mine, Ryan Haas, years ago, before esports was permeating the high schools, way before, he's like, hey, we should start an esports team. And I said, why is that? And he says, well, we're always looking into things in the future that are going to be big. I think this is going to be big. And he started showing me the numbers. Again, this was 5 years ago. And the numbers were impressive, but the trajectory was even more impressive. So he's like, look, man, I want to run with this. And we were at the right place at the right time. Believe it or not, as the innovation director, I also had a budget that I had to spend, and I was getting close to the deadline. I mean, within 48 hours of the deadline. And I had to come up with some creative ways to spend it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we can do this. So it wasn't enough for everything, but it was enough to get a good start. But also the open source learning part, we started reaching out to industry experts, and they were so excited. I probably most notably, a guy from Cloud9, a guy that actually started, because it was Jordan Gilbert, was nothing. Rick Fox reached out. We did a podcast with him, and that was an interesting story on why, he was a former basketball player, but then really got into esports. And then we also, I just remember his screen name was Raynad, but he had started his own team as well. And some of these guys were like, oh, where were you when I was in high school, kind of thing. So we had immediately some support from esports people and some companies, just because everybody knew that at some point esports was going to permeate the high school scene. It just hadn't been done yet. And without a doubt, I can firmly say that there had been clubs, but never an embraced team like a sports, they considered it a team, not a club. So that was a really nice thing about the school I was at, that they really embraced it.
Awesome. So other side of things, how did you find your way to building STARTedUP Foundation?
Our successful students. We run the state pitch competition in Indiana. That is an entrepreneur pitch competition, and we also start chapters. But basically, we take high school students that have ideas and learn how to turn them into businesses. Well, we got started because the state of Indiana said, what the heck are you doing? Why? I mean, some of my students were doing really amazing things. And so we had this idea of starting chapters, because I'm not going to lie, most high schools are not interested in innovation and entrepreneurship. They say things that we do innovative things, but to be fair, they're innovative things within a certain curriculum. We're innovative with our algebra class, or we'll have really innovative approach to our poetry unit, which I'm not dogging that. Just raw open source innovation wasn't really being done a lot, or as much as we'd like to. And so we decided the foundation, we work with kids after school and in different capacities.
Awesome. So what's the mission? What are you striving to achieve? I mean, you kind of spoke to what it is, but overall.
To get kids out of the compliance conformity and into an entrepreneurial way of being. Entrepreneurs are superheroes. Every entrepreneur is usually solving some sort of a problem, whether it's even boredom or a flex tape. No matter what, they're inventing solutions. And in my humble opinion, I think far too many of our students are on their phones, looking at other people flexing, other people being successful. So we are a nation of consumers. I wanted to have a nation of producers and of problem solvers. It's one thing to say, I want to be a part of an awareness campaign. USA sucks, or I don't like this. Well, awareness means nothing unless there's some sort of solution. I want to have more kids be able to provide solutions, which again is entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So your responsibilities within the organization, what do you actively do? What's your day to day look like?
So as the president, I've built a team. I'm out talking to more mayors, city council, superintendents, teachers, parents, starting chapters, building the state pitch competition. We're aiming to have a national accelerator possibly next year. There's just a lot going on. But the nice thing is like, it's not just me. We've built a team and they're allowing me to be the frontward facing, evangelist for this. And that's been also kind of nice because I think that a lot of people don't know what students need until all of a sudden they're like, wait, having them pursue passion and interest and be able to match their skills with things that are other than making sure that their SAT score is really high. Maybe this is needed.
Yeah. So with everything going on right now, COVID wise, has it put a stop to your meeting with mayors, and have you
No, actually it's tripled down. It's, I hate saying this coming out of my mouth the way it's going to sound, but COVID has been a blessing in the sense that there is a big problem to solve. Ironically enough, I was running a little bit late because I was talking to a person who they're now re-looking at what their child's education is. Now that they were basically homeschooled, they're like, wait, you're working on this? You need to find other things. You need to pursue other interests than just memorizing. And quite frankly, the two best words right now in economic development are talent pipeline and talent retention. Every city in America doesn't want to lose Doug Benedicts. They want them to stay here, please. Because, and I think that's such a unique time is that with especially rural communities, if they can get broadband, game over, like in a good way. Right now, the world is wanting more remote workers. So you can't work in Podunk, Indiana and not have broadband. But if you do have broadband, you can remote work from anywhere now and do a lot of really cool things. So there's been a lot of talk in that regard too.
That makes complete sense. So, how does esports and your work and initiatives at, StartedUP, do they intersect? Is there a connection to be made there?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's one of my favorite things. Like we got laughed at a little bit when we first started an esports team. And my answer to all that was, what is the role of the teacher? Well, to prepare our students for the future. There's a lot of future in esports. So like that would end any sort of, well, you're having them play video games. Ha ha ha. Isn't that funny? I'm like, well, you know what it's doing? It's outpacing the NFL. And then when we were able to show them the careers, not as a player, and then all of a sudden, like the cultural event of all cultural events was Ninja playing with Drake. That made people go, wait, you can make money as a streamer? Wait, this takes a team of people? Wait, he needs a publicist? Wait, you can work with performance artists? Like that made it easier. And so esports has been something that I'm never going to pretend that I'm an expert. but we were really early, and I've enjoyed being somewhat of an evangelist. I'm an evangelist for innovation and opening up your world to more things. High schools need to open up to esports.
So question kind of off of what you just said, was that a barrier? Was public opinion or the opinion of the people?
Oh, yeah.
In school? Yeah.
Oh, God, yes. Like more than anything. I mean, when you explain this to a parent or a teacher, hey, we want to start an esports team. My son already plays too many damn video games.
Yeah.
Number one thing it said. Or, oh, so you're going to have them be even more doing nothing. My son's already fat kind of attitude, which, by the way, proud moment, our esports team played every other day. They were physically active. We played ultimate frisbee. We got to go to the weight room. Like, we treated it like a sport. You had to be physically fit. We also did grade checks. So that little negative stereotype of like, well, what if their grades go to hell? Well, then they'll get kicked off. I got them physically active. I literally listened to all the things that we were going to be made fun of or we were made fun of. And I'm like, fine, then we'll have a solution to that. So I think that helped too, is that when we address the things that were, okay, we really need to address this, then those things went away.
Absolutely. So I guess what you're saying here is education around this field of esports was
yes,
kind of the name of the game when you first got started.
Well, and I was educating educators.
Yeah. This
isn't your dad's Atari 2600. This is an opportunity to play a sport. Mm-hmm. And some people never converted. And quite frankly, I don't care. You know, at one point they're like, throwing a ball into a peach basket. Well, that's just dumb. Okay. The world went on without you.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a very great way to look at it. So I guess off of that, you've made these arguments that it's worthwhile. There's a future in it. What have you seen come out of it? I guess with your team or just in general with
in some ways we were too early.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like we went through a wave. Ryan started it, and when he went on to college, then it kind of took a dip. Mostly because, again, it was led by Ryan. I was there to make sure that, okay, lights are on, and we recruited then a kick butt coach, and who, ironically enough, had just graduated from high school the year before. So having him be the coach, well, then he got recruited to help out with an esports company, and then that hurt. So now it's getting back to being good. They found another team, because I'm not at the school anymore. I now run this foundation. So now that they have an educator, but like other schools have, like, we were the prettiest girl at the dance because we were the only girl at the dance. Now other high schools are climbing on, and in some ways they're just as good. And Noblesville has to climb back into that and make sure they establish themselves as a really great esports team. So in some ways we were too early, but I think that they're fitting in again.
Mm-hmm. So, and maybe this has already been answered, but STARTedUP, right? How do you see that expanding the role of esports technologies within education or education?
Yeah, I'd always like to be an ambassador to just educate the educators. Like I wanted my students to monetize any sort of setup or consultancy fees on. So say a school's like, man, we should have that here. Great, Ryan and your team, you go do that, right? I never wanted to. That was never my area to monetize. But going and speaking on behalf of innovation and open source learning, I will always throw in, oh, by the way, consider. So I didn't want to become the esports guy. That's better suited for people that have way better experience. So I like to mention it. I like to get them primed, get their mind opened up about it, and then hopefully hand them off to people that like, okay, here's the rigs you buy. Please start off with these games so you don't offend parents. You can work your way up to these games as soon as, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So getting into all of it, getting into esports, right? Is there anyone that you specifically found yourself taking advice from, or advice you were given that was specifically beneficial?
None. We blazed our own path. And I'm not saying that to be cocky. I end up finding people later, like Chris Aviles, who's in New Jersey. Steve, oh my gosh, if Steve listens to this, he's going to be so mad at me that I forget his name. I will remember it. My 40-something-year-old brain sometimes stalls out. But there's some other people that have been doing esports at the really beginning level as well. And I eventually found them later. But in those early days, no, I didn't take advice from anybody. We just did, and we learned and we adapted. If anything, we helped change minds. Or even connecting with people that were totally badass. Again, Jordan Gilbert. Oh my gosh, that's cool. That's awesome. And when we said that we even were working out and doing other things, oh my gosh. So we never did that as advice. We just we listened to people and pick away and tell me why it's stupid, and we adapted.
Yeah. So, being some of the first people in all of it, and being able to witness where it's gone, where do you see it going in the near future? Can you give us a vision of what you think the next few years?
Yeah, I see it much like youth sports. I think that there's going to be AAU teams. I don't think it's going to be through the amateur athletics. Anyway, there's going to be, just like anything, there's going to be so much room at the school level, and then there's going to be little leagues kind of thing. I think it's going to expand. I don't necessarily think it's going to be as grandiose as some think that it might be. I don't think, I'm pressing the pause button a little bit on the Ready Player One, that people are going to have the full suits and everything else. And who knows, maybe that will be adapted. But I think that there's a huge, huge upside on esports. What my hope is that I'm a Jane McGonigal fan. So teacher moment. If you guys don't know who Jane McGonigal is, she's really big on the gamification of a lot of things. Wrote a book called Reality is Broken. It's wonderful. She also would design games on how to solve the world's biggest problems and gamify it. I'm hoping that not just first person shooter games are awesome. That's cool. But I also hope that there's a lot more of how are we going to fix this problem in our society through, because gamers are badass, man. They know how to problem solve. You give people challenges like that. And I think whoever the president is, if they'd really wise up, they'd work with gamers and say, hey, and hackers, here's our problem we need to solve. You don't even need to pay them. Just put it out there. Jeez, man.
Yeah. So from the high school's perspective, I suppose the pipeline, us being at Butler here, kind of creating this new network, this, new field. What do you see that being like? You think it's going to be basically like soccer and football where you're scouted?
Yeah, I think that Butler's is going to be. So let's go and talk about who the real kingpin of this, and that's in my still maybe it's changed, but it was Robert Morris University, and then it was other small schools, because RMU figured out that they could be the Alabama football of esports, and their college campus is under 5,000 for sure.
Yeah.
So I think that the smaller schools are going to be like, wait, we can be super relevant at a 1/100th of the budget of the football program. So I think that you guys are in the right place at the right time. I think the Butler's going to triple down on what they have, and wisely so. And you guys are really circling around like, hey, we're a college of innovation. Killer. That fits hand in hand. Esports and innovation programs should go hand in hand. So yeah, I think Butler's future in esports moving forward is rock solid. But at the same time, as a cautionary tale, just like at my program in Noblesville, you should also hear those footsteps coming. There's other small schools out there that will want to dominate the space. And I'm talking like really small schools that I've seen open up the floodgates. And they're recruiting people from like Finland and Korea to come in and be instructors for esports. So it's being taken seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's killer.
On that serious note, what do you see the competition, I guess, being between, let's rephrase that. Do you think there's going to be a competition, a butting of heads between traditional sports and esports?
Of course there is.
Yeah.
You just asked a question, are people going to butt heads over money?
Yeah.
Sure. And people are the traditionalists. Like, again, that's why I was so humbled and honored when we first started our esports program. The first person to congratulate me was the football coach. Now, to be fair, he knew that I wasn't going to exactly poach his players. They were two separate things. But if you're looking at a school who has had a diminished traditional sports budget, and then the principal wants to allocate a diminished budget already to the esports program, yeah, there's going to be some hurt feelings.
Yeah. Taking us back to, StartedUP a little bit. You spoke about it. It's a pitch program essentially. Is that all of the programming it does? Their community engagement efforts?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the community engagement stuff is really like we have our students work with community leaders and then a lot of times nonprofits, and we create solutions. Again, we're about engaging our high school students to be in the community and providing solutions. So it's not always about a product, an app, or something like that. It can be you wanting to use some of your intellectual skills to help empower other organizations.
Yeah. Awesome. So kind of the last question we throw at everybody here. Do you have two other industry experts, people you've encountered that you think would give us a unique kind of perspective, kind of like you have already, that you can name off the top of your head?
Actually, I'll go with one of our first collaborators and this super awesome guy is Jordan Gilbert. Nothing on Twitter. He's OG as it gets. Matter of fact, I think he was going to be like, they're kind of wanting to do a players union because some of the esports teams have insufferable amount of hours played and all this other stuff. So Jordan's got a really unique perspective on the early days and where it's going. I think he's fantastic. And then, I mean, you could go with people like, the personalities, Dr. Disrespect or, some of these other people that, I mean, obviously, Ninja would be the first person on a lot of people's mind, but I mean, like some of the people have been streaming and being personalities, but I like to look under like some of the behind the scenes people that are really throwing some interesting, like I was at an education conference, as it was ISTE, the International Society of Technology Educators. 3.5 years ago, I was the only one to present, I'm pretty sure I was the only one to present. This year, there was like 30 sessions. And then there are some companies that are really tripling down on it. And quite frankly, they're chasing the money. Like, no disrespect to them, they're chasing the money. But I think that there's some really powerhouses out there of esports that they're just not necessarily streamers. They're working for companies and they're really seeing the advantage of this, and they're really wanting to kind of push this forward. I was going to look up Steve's last name because I swear to you, this is embarrassing that I cannot. Steve Isaacs. Oh my gosh. Steve, when you watch this video, because you probably will, Steve Isaacs is an educator and has been really high on the esports scene for a long time, especially really at the beginnings of like Minecraft EDU and stuff like that. He's been awesome.
Awesome. Well, like I said, that was our last question. So that was kind of it for this interview session. Those are great suggestions. Don, thank you for being here. President of StartedUP Foundation, your time, greatly appreciated. Appreciate all the information you shared. Stay safe, stay well, go Dogs.
Thanks, Doug.